Good morning. My name is Peter Pearson, and I'm president of an organization called the Friends of the St. Paul Public Library in Minnesota. The Friends of the St. Paul Public Library is a combination of a library friends group and a library foundation. It's been in existence for about 68 years, but we've only had staff for about the last 22 years. The mission of this organization is threefold. We do all of the fundraising for the St. Paul Public Library. We also do an annual grassroots citizen advocacy effort on behalf of the public funding for the library. And then we do a series of public awareness events and programs that bring people to the library. Of all the things that we do for the library, clearly we spend the most time on our fundraising activities. But probably the most important activity we do in support of our library is the grassroots citizen advocacy in support of strong public funding for the library. I know I certainly feel strongly that way, and if you were to speak to our library director, Kit Hadley, I'm sure she would also indicate that she believes that's probably the most important thing that we do for the library. So I want to give a little bit of history about how our political advocacy effort began, and then talk about why I believe it's been effective here in St. Paul. So in 1992, the mayor had proposed a cut to the library's budget, which was going to be the third year in a row of cuts to the library's funding. Members of the Friends Board felt that it was time to speak up and that the Friends needed to take a more active role in letting the elected officials know we weren't going to stand by and accept cuts to the library every year. So we've always recruited former elected officials to our board of directors, and one of the former elected officials was asked to chair a standing committee for our organization, our political advocacy committee. She and I met initially and decided that we wanted to recruit members to the committee, and the way that we did that was we have 13 libraries in St. Paul. We approached the branch supervisors of all 13 libraries and asked them to identify for us people in their community who were politically active and supported the library. In each case, those library staff members knew the type of individual that we were interested in, and they were able to forward to us the information, contact information on all of these individuals. We were able to ask all these individuals from all the neighborhoods in St. Paul to convene for a first ever advocacy committee meeting. At that meeting, the chair of the committee, along with all of the individuals from around the neighborhoods, met with our library director. And the library director was able to talk about the impact that this most recent budget cut would have on the library. From those discussions, we met for about 3 times with the library director and talked about what it is we would like to propose to the mayor and the city council. We came up with a platform, and then we converted that platform into a position paper, just a 2-sided piece of paper that gives rationale for our proposed funding areas for the library, and also a very specific dollar amount that we were hoping to be reinstated into the library's budget and what it would be used for. The first thing we did was to present that to the mayor himself, because in our city, the mayor develops a budget proposal that he then turns over to the city council. So we got to the mayor fairly early in the budget process, told him what it was we'd like to see in the library's budget for the following year, and then hoped that these things would appear in the mayor's budget. Well, they didn't, and that didn't stop us. We were pretty certain that the mayor wouldn't do that initially, so our next step was to go to the city council, who take the mayor's budget and decide what to do with it ultimately. This is where it was key to have individuals who represented each of our political wards in the city on our committee. These are individuals who oftentimes worked on a campaign for this particular elected official, certainly were friends and neighbors of that individual. It was a name that was recognized. So we had that person make the call to their city council representative saying that they wanted to meet with him to talk about the library's budget. In each case, we would have 2 or 3 members of our committee who lived in that ward who'd be at the meetings. And then we decided that we wanted to have myself present at each meeting so that we could guarantee that the message was going to be sent the same to all 7 city council members. We finished up those meetings by the end of the summer. We had a great response from the committee, from the council members, and we're then ready to go more public with what it is we were hoping to accomplish. We developed a press release. We sent the press release out to not only the daily newspapers and electronic media, but also the neighborhood newspapers, some of which came out weekly and some of which came out monthly. One of the things we found out was our city council members read those neighborhood newspapers very closely. They're looking to get the pulse beat of their neighborhood, and so having coverage in those papers was almost more important than getting an article in the daily newspaper. We were fortunate in that first year that we got both. Following the press release, we then would attend meetings where the city council was deliberating on the budget. We were present to just show that we were concerned. We were also present to answer questions that they may have had about our proposal. And then the final piece of our advocacy effort in that first year was to attend what's called in St. Paul public testimony. And that's a time when all the members of the city council gather in the evening and they let any citizen in St. Paul come and talk to them about what they see as a priority in the city's budget. We, of course, had an entire committee of advocates ready to show up. So on that particular night, we had 25 people there to talk to the city council about the importance of the library's budget, and there were only 5 other people present to talk about all the other issues facing the city of St. Paul that year. We had kind of an amazing thing happen in that the city council asked individuals to get up and talk about what it is they were interested in the city's budget. And after about 10 people in a row had spoken about the library, the city council said, perhaps we should see if there's anybody here for another cause or issue, since we know that we've got a lot of library supporters. So at that point, another individual raised her hand, said that she was there to talk about the parks and the importance of parks and rec funding. She got up, she gave her 2 minutes of testimony, and we couldn't have scripted this any better. This is a woman we didn't know, but at the end of her remarks, she turned to the city council and said, I was here tonight to talk about parks and rec, but if I would have known that people were going to be here to talk about the library, that's what I would have told you is the most important funding need for our city. So again, we couldn't have scripted it better. We were thrilled to have someone just spontaneously come forward and talk about the importance of the library. And not surprisingly, we received all of the funding that we had requested that particular year. The city council went over and above the mayor's budget to put in the funding that we had requested. So that first success really fueled our committee, made them very excited to start the process again the following year. We've now been doing this for over 20 years, and the gains that we've gotten in terms of public funding for the library have been absolutely tremendous. It's also elevated the library among our elected officials so that they start to see that the library is the one institution that has a very strong and vocal political advocacy effort of citizens in our city. So there's a few things that we learned along the way that I think have made our efforts successful. First, of course, is that we developed a standing committee. It really needs that attention within your organization. This isn't going to be something that happens occasionally. This is an ongoing activity, and our elected officials know that we're going to be back every year, year after year after year, with an advocacy platform requesting funds to be added to the library's budget. That's a critical piece. Another thing that's important about our effort is that we started early in the year. Many political advocacy efforts are what I would call 11th hour efforts to overturn a budget problem at the very last minute. Every now and then you can be successful with that, but typically it's not going to work to have the budget change at the last minute. So our effort starts in January and culminates at the end of the year in December when the City Council finalizes its approved budget for the next year. We've been there all through the year, deliberating, talking, working with our City Council and elected officials. So we're not an 11th hour group. We are very thoughtful about this process, and it's a year-long process. Another thing that makes us successful is that we meet with our library director. We want to make sure that the committee is very well educated about the library's needs, and the only way that's going to happen is to have the library director present. But the interesting part, of course, is she educates us all through our meetings, brings us what the library's needs are, but then when it comes time to talking about those needs to the elected officials, she can't be anywhere near, because she reports to the mayor. Whatever the mayor has proposed for the library's budget, that's the budget that she needs to support. And invariably, our committee is going to be asking for more money than the mayor has proposed in his budget. And finally, another piece that has made us so successful, I believe, is the wonderful news coverage that we get through our neighborhood newspapers, as well as the mainstream media. And then the position paper that's been developed each year, which is a very succinct way to cover exactly what it is we're looking for. We use specific dollar amounts. We don't just ask for a generalized increase in the library's budget. We have it earmarked for very specific purposes, and we give a rationale for why those are so important in the library's budget at this time. And the final thing that we've been doing in more recent years is we are offering matching funds with our private money that the foundation raises. So for instance, in many years we'll ask the City Council to increase the library's materials budget. And we'll typically say that if they increase the library's materials budget by a certain amount of money, we will add in another amount of private money so that the city's money is actually being leveraged to be even worth more. That's something that our City Council members have told us they can't refuse. And finally, we've brought into our tent of library advocates people that represent other issues in the city. It's not just the tried and true library supporters. We bring in people that represent homeschoolers, people that represent senior citizen groups, people that represent job training programs. These are all groups that clearly have a strong invested interest in strong public libraries for their clients. And we want them to be a part of our advocacy effort so that when we go to the elected officials, we can truly say, strong libraries are a priority of everybody in the city of St. Paul, not just the tried and true library lovers. That's, in sum, what we do for our political advocacy. Like I say, we've been doing it for 22 years. The amount of money that's actually gone into the library's budget just from this volunteer effort has been over $20 million over these years. So we are clearly of the belief that this is probably the most important activity we conduct here in our library foundation.